Most men think losing interest makes them disappear from a woman's mind. In reality, it often does the opposite. The moment she realizes you've lost interest, something shifts inside her. Not immediately, not dramatically, but quietly. And that quiet shift is what most men never see coming. Because up until that moment, the dynamic was clear. You were available. You were consistent. You were emotionally present. She knew where you stood. And certainty made everything feel safe. But the instant that certainty disappears, the emotional ground changes. She starts replaying interactions. She notices your absence. She feels the space where your attention used to be. And the human mind does not ignore sudden emotional gaps. It tries to understand them. This is where most men misunderstand the situation completely. They believe losing interest means the story is over. They assume silence equals indifference. They think stepping back removes them from relevance. But attraction does not work on visibility alone. It works on contrast. And contrast is born when interest is withdrawn naturally. This video is not about playing games. It's not about pretending not to care. And it's not about disappearing to provoke jealousy. It's about understanding what actually happens inside her mind when she realizes she no longer holds your attention the way she once did. Because when a woman senses that a man's interest is fading, her emotional position changes. She is no longer responding to him. She is responding to the loss of certainty. Certainty is comfortable. Uncertainty is activating. High-value men don't chase reactions. They change direction. And that change is felt long before it is understood. This is why some women suddenly reach out after a man pulls back. Why curiosity replaces indifference. Why emotional distance sometimes triggers emotional awareness. Not because the man did anything dramatic, but because he stopped doing something subtle. He stopped over-investing. He stopped centering her reactions. He stopped anchoring his emotional state to her attention. And that shift creates a psychological gap. Gaps demand attention. This video will show you what really happens when she realizes you've lost interest. Why her emotions don't respond the way you expect. Why pulling back often creates reflection instead of closure. And why the man who moves on calmly is remembered far more than the man who stays emotionally available. If you've ever wondered why stepping back changed her behavior, why silence felt louder than words, or why she noticed you only after you stopped chasing, you're about to understand the psychology behind it. Watch until the end, because the final point explains why losing interest the right way often creates more impact than staying interested ever did. Before we start, a quick reminder. The real transformation doesn't happen on YouTube. It happens inside the community. If these videos have opened your eyes, what's inside will rebuild your mindset completely. It's not just a course. It's a brotherhood. A private space where men master attraction, emotional control, and the psychology of power. You don't join for a month. You join for life. Every future course, book, and lesson is yours forever. No subscriptions, no limits. Just one decision that changes your direction. If you're serious about growth, discipline, and purpose, click the link below. Join the community. Enroll once. Grow forever. Let's dive in. Section 1. The moment. She senses your interest. Fading, the power dynamic shifts. Attraction does not collapse the moment a man loses interest. It rearranges itself. Most men assume that when they pull back, they become irrelevant. They think less effort equals less impact. But emotionally, something very different happens. When a woman senses that your interest is no longer guaranteed, the entire dynamic shifts quietly beneath the surface. Up until that moment, she was responding to certainty. She knew you were there. She knew you cared. She knew your attention was available. That certainty allowed her to relax emotionally. even if attraction was not at its peak. But when interest fades, certainty disappears. And certainty is the foundation most women don't realize they're standing on until it's gone. The moment she senses that your energy has changed, her nervous system reacts before her mind does. She feels the absence before she understands it. The predictable rhythm of interaction breaks, and with it, her emotional position changes. This is where most men misunderstand what they're seeing. They expect indifference. They expect distance. They expect the story to end. Instead, something else begins. She starts observing. She notices timing. She replays interactions. She compares the present to the past. And without meaning to, she starts tracking your behavior. Not because she suddenly wants you back, but because the emotional balance has shifted. High-value men understand that attraction is deeply connected to emotional leverage, not effort. When you were consistently invested, the leverage was hers. She could take or leave your attention without consequence. But when your interest fades naturally, that leverage weakens. This does not create panic. It creates awareness. Awareness is powerful, because awareness forces reassessment. She begins asking herself questions she never asked before. Not consciously at first, but emotionally. Why does his energy feel different? Why isn't he reacting the same way? Why does his absence feel noticeable? These questions don't come from desire yet. They come from disrupted expectation. And disrupted expectation is the doorway to emotional movement. High-value men don't force this shift. They don't announce it. They don't use silence as a weapon. They simply stop over-investing when the energy is no longer mutual. That authenticity is what makes the shift believable. When a man loses interest the right way, it does not feel manipulative. It feels final. And finality is what makes people reflect. This is why pulling back often has more emotional impact than chasing ever did. Because chasing reassures. Pulling back removes reassurance. And when reassurance is gone, attention turns inward. This is the first thing that really happens when she realizes you've lost interest. The power dynamic resets. Section 2. Why her mind starts filling the silence the moment you pull back. When your interest fades, the silence you create does not remain empty. Her mind fills it. This is the part most men never understand. Silence is not the absence of communication. It is the absence of certainty. And the human mind reacts strongly when certainty disappears without explanation. When you were consistently present, her mind did not need to work. Your attention was predictable. Your availability was known. Emotional effort on her side was minimal because the structure of the interaction felt stable. But when that structure changes, the mind compensates. She starts replaying moments. She notices patterns she ignored before. She remembers how you used to respond. She compares the tone, the timing, the energy. And without trying to, she starts searching for meaning. Not because she suddenly misses you, but because her expectations were disrupted. High-value men understand that the mind hates unresolved shifts. When a man pulls back calmly, without drama or explanation, he creates an emotional gap that demands interpretation. That gap becomes loud. This is why women often feel confused when a man loses interest quietly. There is no argument to justify distance, no conflict to blame, no clear ending to close the loop. And without closure, the mind keeps returning to the same question. What changed? Most men sabotage this moment by breaking the silence too early. They feel uncomfortable with distance, so they fill it. They explain. They reassure. They check in. And in doing so, they give her certainty back. Certainty ends curiosity. High-value men do not rush to restore comfort. They allow silence to exist naturally because silence reveals truth. If her interest is real, it surfaces. If it isn't, clarity arrives. Either way, the man wins. This is why silence after losing interest works only when it is authentic. not used to provoke, not used to test, but used as a consequence of alignment. When you stop investing where energy is no longer mutual, silence is not strategy. It is self-respect in motion. And that self-respect is felt. A woman senses when silence comes from confidence rather than manipulation. One feels calm, the other feels charged. And women are extremely sensitive to emotional charge. High-value men carry none. They allow her mind to do the work because they no longer need to control the outcome. They have already accepted it. And acceptance is what gives silence its power. This is the second thing that really happens when she realizes you've lost interest. Her mind becomes active where it once was passive. Section 3. Why she feels the loss of your interest before she feels desire. When a woman realizes you've lost interest, the first emotion she feels is not desire. It's loss of emotional control. This is where most men misunderstand the situation. They expect attraction to switch on instantly. They look for obvious signs. They wait for messages, reactions, or sudden interest. And when they don't see them immediately, they assume nothing is happening. But emotionally, something important is already unfolding. Before desire can return, the sense of control must disappear. When your interest was consistent, she controlled the rhythm. She decided how close or distant things felt. She knew your reactions. She understood your emotional availability. That control made the dynamic predictable. The moment your interest fades, that predictability breaks. And predictability is comfort. Without it, she feels unsettled. Not anxious, not desperate, but alert. Her emotional system shifts from passive to active. She starts paying attention where she used to relax. This is why many women don't immediately chase when a man pulls back. Instead, they observe. They test subtly. They watch how permanent the shift feels. High-value men understand this phase deeply. They do not rush it. They do not interrupt it. They do not seek confirmation. They allow the loss of control to settle. Because desire cannot grow in a space where everything is secure. Desire requires emotional movement. And emotional movement begins with imbalance. This imbalance is not created through games. It is created through authentic withdrawal. A man who loses interest naturally does not send mixed signals. His behavior becomes consistent in a different direction. Less availability, less emotional investment, more focus elsewhere. And that consistency makes the shift real. Real shifts force reflection. She may tell herself she doesn't care. She may distract herself. She may rationalize the distance. But the emotional change has already registered. And once control is gone, curiosity follows. Curiosity is the bridge between loss and desire. She begins wondering what you're doing, why you're different, why your energy no longer reaches for her. And those questions activate emotional engagement. High-value men never try to skip this stage. They understand that if desire is going to return, it must be her idea, not his effort. And that can only happen if he does not interfere. This is why chasing ruins everything. Chasing restores control. It gives certainty back, and certainty shuts down emotional movement. High-value men choose patience over panic. They allow the emotional gap to exist. And in that gap, her emotions reorganize themselves. This is the third thing that really happens when she realizes you've lost interest. She feels the loss of control first. Desire comes later. Section 4. Why you're calm. Withdrawal feels stronger than any emotional reaction. Most men believe that emotional reactions create impact. They think expressing disappointment, frustration, or hurt will make a woman understand what she's losing. But emotional reactions do not create strength. They create readability. And readability kills mystery. When you react emotionally, she knows exactly where you stand. She knows she still matters deeply. She knows she still has influence. Even if the reaction is negative, the signal is the same. Your emotional state is still connected to her. High-value men understand that calm withdrawal is far more powerful than emotional expression. Calm withdrawal is not punishment. It is not silence used to provoke. It is the natural outcome of a man who has recognized misalignment and chosen to redirect his energy without resentment. That calm is what makes the shift undeniable. A woman expects emotion when interest fades. She expects conflict, explanations, or dramatic distance. When none of that appears, the absence feels heavier than words. She cannot label it. There is no anger to respond to, no sadness to soothe, no argument to resolve, only a quiet change in direction. That quiet change removes emotional hooks, and without hooks, the mind searches for meaning. High-value men do not announce their withdrawal. They do not say, "I'm losing interest." They simply stop investing emotionally where energy is no longer returned. Their tone remains respectful. Their behavior remains grounded, but their availability changes. This is what makes it powerful, because the shift feels intentional rather than reactive. A woman senses that she is no longer the emotional center, and that realization creates discomfort. Not panic, but awareness. Awareness leads to reassessment. She begins wondering if she misread the situation, if she underestimated your independence, if she assumed permanence where there was only choice. And that internal questioning is what keeps you relevant in her mind. Most men ruin this moment by seeking reassurance. They check in. They soften the withdrawal. They try to end on good terms emotionally. And in doing so, they dilute the impact. High-value men allow discomfort to exist without fixing it. They understand that discomfort is not cruelty, it is clarity. It reveals whether attraction is real or merely comfortable. This is why calm withdrawal feels stronger than any emotional reaction. It signals self-respect without aggression. It communicates finality without hostility. And it removes certainty without explanation. That combination is powerful. This is the fourth thing that really happens when she realizes you've lost interest. Your calm becomes louder than any words you could have spoken. Section 5. Why she starts reevaluating you once you're no longer emotionally available. The moment your interest fades and stays faded, something subtle begins to happen inside her. She starts to reevaluate you. Not emotionally at first, cognitively. Up until that point, she had a fixed image of you. She knew how you felt. She knew your position. She knew your availability. And because she knew it, she did not need to question it. Familiarity locked her perception in place. When your emotional availability disappears, that image breaks. And when an image breaks, the mind tries to rebuild it. This is where most men think attraction magically returns. It doesn't. What returns first is assessment. She begins looking at you from a new angle. She remembers moments she overlooked. She replays interactions with different meaning. She notices qualities she took for granted when your interest was guaranteed. Not because you changed who you are, but because the frame changed. High-value men understand that attraction is deeply tied to framing. When you were emotionally available, you were framed as constant. When you pull back calmly, you are reframed as selective. Selectivity creates value. A man who is always available feels abundant. A man who becomes unavailable feels scarce. And scarcity forces re-evaluation. This does not mean she suddenly wants you back. It means her certainty about you dissolves. And certainty is the enemy of attraction. When certainty is gone, curiosity re-enters. She starts wondering if she misjudged you, if she underestimated your independence, if she assumed you would always be there. This is why many women start noticing men only after those men stop investing emotionally. The man did not become more attractive. The perception of him changed. High-value men never try to influence this re-evaluation. They don't highlight their value. They don't remind her of what she's losing. They let distance do the work. Distance removes emotional noise. Without constant interaction, the mind fills in the blanks, and the blanks are rarely neutral. They are shaped by memory, imagination, and contrast. She may remember how calm you were, how grounded you felt, how little you needed reassurance. Those traits stand out more in absence than they ever did in presence. This is the part most men ruin by reappearing too soon. They feel the shift. They sense attention returning. And they rush back emotionally, restoring the old frame. High-value men do not do this. They understand that re-evaluation is fragile. It requires consistency. If you pull back, you must stay aligned. Otherwise, the mind snaps back to certainty, and the moment is lost. This is the fifth thing that really happens when she realizes you've lost interest. She starts seeing you through a different lens. And once perception changes, the dynamic can never return to what it was before. Section 6. Why her emotional response is slower than you expect, and why that's a good sign. One of the biggest mistakes men make after pulling back is expecting an immediate reaction. They assume that if she hasn't reached out, shown interest, or changed her behavior quickly, then nothing is happening. And because of that assumption, they panic, overthink, and undo the very shift that created impact in the first place. High-value men understand something most men don't. Emotional processing is slow. When a woman realizes you've lost interest, her emotions do not rush to the surface. They reorganize quietly in the background. What looks like indifference on the outside is often internal recalibration on the inside. This is why silence after losing interest can feel confusing. There is no instant feedback, no dramatic response, no clear signal. And that ambiguity makes most men uncomfortable. They want certainty. They want confirmation. They want proof that the withdrawal mattered. But seeking proof restores emotional dependence, and emotional dependence collapses leverage. High-value men resist this urge. They understand that emotional impact is delayed. The mind processes change first. The emotions follow later. And when emotions finally surface, they often appear indirectly. A sudden message weeks later. A casual check-in. An unexpected reaction to something small. These moments are not random. They are the result of internal emotional movement that took time to form. This is why patience is critical. If a man breaks alignment too early, he interrupts the process. He gives certainty back before curiosity has matured. And once certainty returns, emotional movement stops. High-value men allow space to stretch naturally. They do not watch the clock. They do not measure days. They do not interpret every silence as rejection. They continue living in the direction they chose when interest faded. And that consistency is what gives the withdrawal credibility. Because withdrawal only works when it feels permanent. Not permanent in the sense of finality, but permanent in direction. When a woman senses that your life is moving forward without reference to her, the emotional impact deepens. This is where most men fail. They pull back physically but remain emotionally attached. They stop messaging but keep waiting. They create distance but stay mentally focused on her reaction. And women feel that. Emotional attachment leaks through behavior, tone, and timing. High-value men remove that leak. They accept that losing interest means letting go of outcome. And letting go of outcome is what allows real emotional response to develop on her side. This is why delayed reactions are often the most meaningful. They come from reflection, not impulse. They are the result of genuine reassessment, not fear-based chasing. Whether she ever reaches out or not becomes secondary. The real shift has already happened. You are no longer reacting. You are no longer seeking validation. You are no longer emotionally anchored to her attention. And that internal shift is the foundation of power. This is the sixth thing that really happens when she realizes you've lost interest. Her emotions move slowly, but when they move because the change felt real. Section 7. Why losing interest? The right way often changes how she remembers you forever. This is the part most men never understand, and it's why they misjudge the entire situation. When you lose interest the right way, You don't just change how she feels in the moment. You change how she remembers you. Memory is not built on consistency. Memory is built on contrast. When you were consistently interested, emotionally available, and predictable, you blended into the background of her emotional world. You felt safe, familiar, known. And familiarity, while comfortable, rarely leaves a lasting imprint. But the moment your interest fades calmly and stays faded, something irreversible happens. You stop being a presence. You become a reference point. High-value men understand that people don't remember who stayed. They remember who changed the direction of the story. When you lose interest without anger, without explanation, and without trying to control the outcome, your absence becomes meaningful. It is no longer interpreted as rejection or punishment. It is interpreted as a decision, and decisions carry weight. A woman may not react immediately. She may not reach out. She may not even consciously think about it at first. But over time, the memory reorganizes itself. She remembers how grounded you were. She remembers how little you chased. She remembers that you didn't collapse when things shifted. And that version of you stands out against every man who reacted emotionally, argued for attention, or tried to stay relevant. This is why losing interest the right way often creates a stronger emotional imprint than staying interested ever did. Because staying interested keeps you predictable. Losing interest with dignity makes you distinct. High-value men do not try to control how they are remembered. They focus on acting in alignment with themselves. And alignment creates consistency that the mind cannot ignore. Even if she never reaches out again, the memory remains intact. You are not associated with neediness, pressure, or emotional instability. You are associated with self-respect, direction, and calm finality. That matters. Because people may forget words, but they never forget how a dynamic ended. Most men end dynamics by clinging, by explaining, by seeking reassurance, and that ending erases their impact. High-value men end dynamics by moving forward, and moving forward without resentment is powerful. It tells her that your life did not shrink, that your identity did not revolve around her validation, that you were capable of losing interest without losing yourself. That is rare, and rarity reshapes perception permanently. This is why the man who loses interest the right way often becomes the man she thinks about later, not because he tried to be remembered, but because his absence felt intentional, grounded, and complete. That is the final truth. In short, losing interest is not powerful because it makes someone miss you. It is powerful because it reveals who you are when attachment is removed. Most men believe that staying interested proves maturity, loyalty, and strength. But when interest is no longer mutual, staying emotionally available becomes self-betrayal. And self-betrayal is felt instantly, even if nothing is said. High-value men understand that attraction does not grow from persistence. It grows from alignment. When a man loses interest the right way, he does not announce it. He does not punish. He does not disappear to provoke emotion. He simply redirects his energy toward a life that continues to move forward. That quiet redirection changes everything. A woman may not react immediately. She may not chase. She may not even acknowledge the shift. But the emotional impact has already happened. Certainty is gone. The old frame is broken. And once a frame breaks, perception can never return to what it was. This is why calm withdrawal carries more weight than emotional reaction. It signals self-respect without aggression. It communicates finality without hostility. And it shows that your emotional center was never dependent on her attention. That is the real power behind losing interest. Remember, knowledge means nothing without action. If you're ready to rise above emotion and lead with purpose, join the community today at the link below. Enroll once, grow forever.